At sunrise, a young woman stood outside the livery with a bundle at her boots and asked for the smallest thing a person can ask for: work enough to earn a corner of the floor. Silas Cade looked at her once, then at the empty street behind her, and said no. He thought he was protecting his peace, but before the next sunrise, the storm would prove he had turned away the only person in town who knew how to save what he loved. Her name was Mara Bell. She was 21, though hardship had sharpened her face into something older. Her dress was clean where it could be clean, patched where it had to be patched, and the little canvas bundle at her feet held everything the road had not stolen from her. The town was called Mercy Crossing, though no one who passed through it ever mistook the name for a promise. It sat on the western Kansas prairie, half railroad stop, half dust, with one church bell, 2 saloons, and more opinions than windows. Mara had reached it before dawn after walking through a night of cold wind. She had watched the lamps go out one by one, waiting until the street was empty enough that her asking would not become entertainment. She chose the livery because it smelled of hay, leather, and animals, and because animals did not laugh when a person was desperate. Silas Cade was inside, brushing down a bay mare with slow, practiced hands. He was 33, broad-shouldered, quiet, and built like a man who had learned to carry pain without showing where it rested. His livery was the only place in Mercy Crossing that stayed orderly no matter how cruel the wind became. Mara stopped at the threshold. "I can work," she said. Silas did not answer right away. "I do not need wages today," she added. "Just supper, maybe a dry corner until morning. I can sweep stalls, mend harness, haul water. I was raised around horses." That was the part he heard and mistrusted. Everyone who wanted something claimed a skill. Everyone passing through had a story. Silas had spent years keeping his name clean in a town eager to stain it, and a young woman sleeping under his roof would give Mercy Crossing a feast of gossip by noon. He set the brush on a beam and wiped his hands on his apron. "I have no place for you," he said. Mara nodded, but she did not move. "I am not asking to be kept." "That is still my answer." The mare shifted behind him, uneasy with the silence. Mara picked up her bundle. For 1 second, her dignity and her hunger stood in the same place, and dignity won. She did not plead. She did not curse him. She only looked at the clean stalls, the stacked hay, the locked tack room, and the man who had more space than Mercy. Then she said, "I understand." But Silas knew she did not. He watched her walk back into the paling light, one hand tight around the rope of her bundle. She passed the water trough without stopping. She crossed the street before the butcher opened his door. By the time the first train whistle cut across the prairie, Mercy Crossing had swallowed her into its hard little morning. Silas told himself he had done the sensible thing. By noon, he had heard her name 3 times. At the general store, Mrs. Halloway said the girl was mending flour sacks for a biscuit and half an onion. At the well, 2 boys laughed that she had offered to clean the undertaker's shed. Near the depot, a brakeman said she carried herself like a queen with no country left. Silas hated that last line most, because it was almost kind. He worked until his shoulders ached. He checked hooves, polished bits, replaced a cracked hinge, and stacked feed sacks higher than they needed to go. But no task stayed between him and the picture of Mara standing in his doorway, asking for labor instead of pity. That evening, the sky turned the color of old iron. The air went still first. Then the horses began to stamp. Silas stepped outside and looked west. Across the prairie, a black wall was rising. Not rain at first, but dust. It rolled over the flat land like a thing with a mind, carrying grit, broken weed, and the smell of lightning. People shouted from the street. Shutters slammed. A woman ran from the laundry with wet sheets bundled in her arms. The depot man cursed as the wind tore tickets from his hand. Then the storm hit Mercy Crossing sideways. Dust became rain. Rain became gravel. The sky cracked white, and the livery doors banged so hard the crossbar jumped in its brackets. Silas was in the rear stall when the first mare screamed. It was Juniper, the bay he had been tending that morning. She was heavy with foal and terrified by thunder. A loose length of torn canvas had snapped from the roof and tangled near her head. She reared, kicking at the stallboard, eyes rolling, breath ragged and wild. Silas grabbed a rope, but the lantern blew out. For 3 blind seconds the barn was all noise. Hooves, wind, wood, rain hammering through the roof. Then a voice cut through the dark. "Do not pull her head. Lower your hand." Silas froze. A match flared near the side door. Mara stood there soaked to the bone, hair plastered beneath her headscarf, rain running off her jaw. She had no coat. Her skirt was dark with mud, but her eyes were steady. "I said, lower your hand," she repeated. "She thinks the rope is another strike." Silas wanted to ask how she had gotten in. He wanted to tell her to leave, but Juniper screamed again, and pride became a useless thing. Mara stepped into the stall as if she had been invited by the mare, not the man. She moved slowly, one palm low, her voice barely louder than the rain. "There now, I know. The mare trembled so hard the floor shook. Mara did not grab. She waited. She let the animal find her voice before she touched her neck. Then she slid her fingers under the torn canvas and eased it free, inch by inch. Silas held the lantern. For once, he followed instead of commanded. The storm threw another gust against the barn. A roof seam split open. Water poured down near the feed bins. Mara looked once and understood the whole room. "Move the sacks," she said. "Now." They worked without argument. Silas hauled feet away from the leak, while Mara dragged a broken trough beneath the worst of the water. She pulled old burlap from a peg and stuffed the gap under the rear door before mud could flood the stalls. When the latch on Juniper's gate cracked, Mara wedged a grooming stool against it before the mare could break loose. By midnight, the livery was bruised, but standing. Juniper had quieted. The feed was dry, the horses were breathing. Mara knelt in the aisle, wringing dirty water from the edge of her shawl, with hands that shook only after the danger had passed. Silas found the blanket he kept in the tack room and held it out. She looked at it, then at him. "I did not come to beg," she said. "I know." The answer surprised them both. Mara took the blanket, wrapped it around her shoulders, and sat with her back against a post. She did not thank him in a way that made him larger. She only closed her eyes for a moment, as if allowing her body to remember it was allowed to rest. Silas stood there with rain dripping through the roof, and shame moving quietly through his chest. At dawn, he expected her to be gone. Instead, he found her in the aisle, sweeping mud into a neat pile beside the door. The blanket was folded on the tack chest. The broken latch was tied with baling wire. Juniper's water bucket had been cleaned. Mara's bundle sat exactly where it had sat the morning before, only now it looked less like a question and more like a decision. Silas leaned in the doorway. "You have done enough," he said. Mara kept sweeping. "Not for breakfast." He almost smiled. He had forgotten how it felt when another person's stubbornness did not irritate him, but steadied the room. "There is coffee on the stove," he said. "I did not ask for coffee." "No," he said. "You earned it." That was how it began. Not with a promise, not with a hand reaching for a hand, not with anything Mercy Crossing could turn into a clean little scandal. It began with work. Mara cleaned stalls in the mornings and mended harness in the afternoons. She slept in the loft above the grain room, behind a curtain made from old wagon canvas. Silas never crossed that line. She never tested whether he would. He paid her in coins when he had them, and in meals when he did not. When she found a better way to stack hay so the damp would not creep up from the floor, he used it without pretending he had thought of it first. When Silas taught her how the railroad men cheated on stable fees, she listened once and never got cheated again. Their talk stayed practical for weeks. Nails, feed, weather, which horse favored which leg, which customer had kind hands and which should never be given a hard-mouthed animal. But silence changed its shape between them. At first silence had been a fence. Then it became a room. Mara learned that Silas rose before the church bell because sleep left him early. Silas learned that Mara hummed when she mended leather, but stopped whenever she realized someone could hear. She learned he hated sugar and coffee. He learned she saved the heel of every loaf for the dog that slept behind the smithy. Mercy Crossing noticed. Of course it did. A town that could ignore hunger could never ignore dignity. Men who had never offered Mara a plate now asked why she looked so settled. Women who had shut their doors against her now wondered aloud about propriety. At the depot, a clerk joked that Silas had finally bought himself a housekeeper cheap. Mara heard it. She did not lower her eyes, but Silas saw the words strike. That afternoon she worked harder than usual, too hard. She scrubbed the same saddle twice, stacked the same wood pile until it leaned, then straightened it again. By supper, her palms had reopened where the rope burns had just begun to heal. Silas set a tin cup beside her. "You do not have to answer them with your hands." Mara stared at the cup. "If I stop working, they will say they were right. If you break yourself working, they will still say they were right." She laughed once without humor. "Then what am I supposed to do?" Silas did not know. That was the truth. He had survived Mercy Crossing by giving it nothing soft to touch. He had kept his head low, his books clean, his business honest, and his life empty enough that no one could use it against him. But Mara was not empty, and the town had found that offensive. The darkest day came on a Sunday, when the church steps were full and the whole street smelled of damp wool and judgment. Mara came out of the mercantile carrying a small sack of cornmeal she had paid for herself. A ranch hand named Porter leaned against the hitching rail and looked her up and down. "Careful, Miss Bell," he called. "A woman who sleeps over a livery should not walk like she owns the road." People heard. Some pretended not to. Some smiled. Mara stopped. Silas was across the street, tightening a wagon strap. The old version of him would have looked away. The careful version. The surviving version. But survival had begun to taste like cowardice. He crossed the street slowly enough that no one could call it rage. "Porter," he said. The ranch hand grinned. "Just making conversation." "No," Silas said. "You are making yourself small and hoping the street will clap for it." The smiles died first. Porter straightened. "You defending her honor now?" "Mara Bell has more honor in the mud on her boots than you have in your Sunday shirt." The whole street went still. Silas stepped beside her, not in front of her. That mattered. "She works for what she eats. She pays what she owes. She saved my horses in the storm while half this town was praying the roofs would hold and doing nothing else. Anyone here who has business with me can speak plain. Anyone here who has business with her had better remember she is not a stray thing you found in the road." Mara did not look at him. She looked at the faces on the steps, the windows, the hitching rail, and she let them see she was not ashamed. That night she packed. Silas found her in the loft, folding the old canvas curtain. For a moment he could not speak. The sight of her bundle open again felt like the storm had returned inside the walls. "I said what I said because it was true," he told her. "I know." "Then why are you leaving?" Mara tied the bundle rope. "Because the truth does not stop people from using it badly." He took that in, because she was right. She turned toward him, calm and tired in a way that frightened him. "You gave me work. You gave me respect. I will not let this town turn either one into a chain around your neck. My neck is my concern, and my name is mine." There it was, the line he had almost crossed without seeing it. Kindness could become possession if a man admired his own sacrifice too much. Silas stepped back. At dawn, Mara walked out of the livery with her bundle over her shoulder. She reached the edge of town before he caught up. The prairie opened ahead, gold and gray under a low sky. A line of telegraph poles leaned toward the horizon like witnesses that had already heard every human excuse. Silas stopped several paces behind her. "Mara." She did not turn. He could have asked her to stay. He could have promised protection, wages, a locked room, a better arrangement. Those would have been easy words, and easy words were not what she had earned. So he told the harder truth. "The morning you came to my door, I saw trouble because I was afraid of what people would say. Last night, I saw you packing because I was afraid of what I had already become." That made her look back. He swallowed. "I do not want you under my roof because I pity you. I do not want you there because the town forced my hand. I want you there because the place is better when you are in it. And if you choose another road, I will not call that ingratitude." The wind moved through the dry grass between them. Mara studied him as if searching for the hook hidden inside the offer. "What are you asking?" Silas looked toward the livery, then back to her. "I am asking for the chance to walk beside you without deciding the road for you." For a long moment, the only sound was the wire humming above them. Then Mara adjusted the bundle on her shoulder and walked past him, back toward town. She did not say yes. She did not need to. Silas followed, not close enough to claim her, not far enough to abandon her. When they returned, Mercy Crossing watched from behind curtains and half-open doors. Mara crossed the street as if it belonged to no one who had mocked her. At the livery, she climbed the ladder to the loft and set her bundle down for the second time. This time, Silas did not mistake it for need. He understood it as trust. Months softened into a pattern the town could not break. Mara's curtain became a proper wall. Her wages became steady. Her name went into the ledger not as Charity, but as partner in all but ink. She handled customers who thought a woman could not know a horse, and by winter most of them had learned to prefer her judgment. Silas stopped pretending he did not listen for her footsteps. One evening, as snow threatened the prairie, Juniper's foal took its first strong run across the yard. Mara laughed before she could stop herself, bright and sudden. Silas turned at the sound, as if a locked door had opened somewhere inside him. She saw him watching. This time, she did not hide the smile. Love did not arrive like a firework in Mercy Crossing. It arrived like chores done without being asked, like coffee left near a cold hand, like a man stepping beside a woman, not in front of her, like a woman staying because staying had finally become a choice instead of a surrender. Years later, when people asked how the Cade Livery had become the strongest place in that hard little town, Silas would tell them about the storm. Mara would correct him. "It began before that," she would say. "It began when a man was wrong and lived long enough to admit it." And Silas, who had once believed peace meant being alone, would smile because he knew she was right. The storm had not given Mara a home. It had only revealed the truth. A home is not the place that takes you in when you are desperate. It is the place where your dignity does not have to knock twice.